Yeah.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our conversation with Hartford Interval House. The North Hartford Promise Zone welcomes Mary Jane Foster, President and CEO, and we're going to be discussing Hartford Interval House's programming, services, and resources with the goal of working to end domestic violence and just generally have a fruitful conversation to see how we can best support our community. Mary Jane, please feel free to begin whenever you're ready.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you so much for inviting me. Anytime I have an opportunity to talk about Interval House and the work that we do, I am grateful. Additionally, it's important that we raise awareness about the actual issue of domestic violence or intimate partner abuse. There is so much about it that just doesn't change. And one of the things that is especially interesting is that when victims come together and talk about their experiences, they learn not only are they not alone, but there are very common threads. So let me start there. Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior that seeks to control the life of another intimate partner. So it can take any number of forms. The Connecticut legislature just passed, and we are the third state in the country to pass laws that expand the definition of domestic violence to include coercive control. So my way of thinking, coercive control is really at the heart of and the core of intimate partner abuse. It is where the relationship moves from candy and flowers and all good things to, why did you say that? You're not going to wear that, are you? Put on a few pounds? What do you mean you're going to see your parents? They're as dumb as, go on. It goes on and on and on. So it's a controlling mechanism to demean and control the behaviors. And that's where it starts. And very often, most often, it escalates into physical violence as well. You may see the coercive control, psychological, verbal abuse, the physical, as I said, sexual abuse involved, forced sexual activity. And then are seeing more and more financial control. So it's important to understand that all of these things comprise violence, domestic violence, and intimate partner abuse, and they are all equally damaging to victims, and all something survivors have to deal with in order to move on with their lives. Now, Interval House let me go back. The domestic violence movement is actually quite new. The first safe house in the world was in England in the mid-60s. The first safe house for battered women, the battered women's movement, as it was called, was in the mid-70s. So Interval House was founded in 1977, a group of women at a women's support group in the basement of Asylum Hill Congregational Church in Hartford, came together, and one of them disclosed that she was being abused. As they talked more about the issue, they realized something had to be done to address it. And one of the great gifts for me as a new CEO was that I came into an organization that was totally mission focused. And what are those core services that are required to meet victims where they are and move them to their next best place? And that was determined all the way back in the late 70s as a 24/7 hotline where people could call not just because they were in crisis, but for information. Believe it or not, victims very often don't understand what's happening. If you think about it, go back to those early days of a dating relationship, and you get to know each other, and slowly, sometimes quickly, you put your faith and your hope and your trust and your joy in another person. And all of a sudden, it begins to shift. The ground beneath you begins to shift, and you don't know what's happening. So the hotline is a wonderful resource for people who just need information someone to talk to about the relationship they are in and to better understand what they are facing. When it becomes a crisis and a victim really feels unsafe, we have a safe house. It's the largest safe house in the state. We have 25 beds. When we are full, as we have been this last year, we have resources such as hotels where we can further safely house victims until there is room in our safe house. In our safe house, we have an advocate for children and an advocate for adults, and a children's program that helps our women and children um, deal with the immediate issues in front of them. And the immediate issues for mothers is where do my kids go to school? How do I continue working? Where do I find safe housing? So we help our women and children navigate all that and also understand the trauma that they've been through and how to address it so that they can move forward. And then a program that I'm very, very proud of is our court advocacy program. We have advocates, they are not lawyers, but they are advocates who well know the issue of domestic violence as well as the court process and system. Stop and think about it for a minute. If you are a victim of domestic violence and there's been an arrest, so the police have come to your house, there's been an arrest, and you go to court the next day where there's going to be an arraignment. Now, keep in mind the person that you have loved, trusted, and had all of those times, good and bad, with, has been arrested and is going to go before a judge. We all think that that's something you can manage, but guess what? How many of us have ever been in a courthouse? How many of us know what that process is? I have been a practicing attorney. I practice family law, and I can promise you this. Going to court is never a fun day. You don't go to court because there's a party or fun things to do there. You go because there is business at hand that you have to deal with. So when a victim comes in who is newly traumatized, doesn't know the process, our advocates are there to wrap our services and guidance and advocacy around them. We have strong relationships with family relations. We know the judges. We know we work closely hand in glove with the police, with law enforcement, even with prosecutors. And we certainly know defense attorneys as well, so that we navigate the best possible outcome for victims. In addition to which, we have a civil process, and that's where there's been no arrest, but a victim comes into the courthouse looking for a restraining order, a temporary restraining order, or wants to file for divorce or a just custody or visitation. And we have advocates who navigate those very complicated and shoals for them there as well. And then finally, we have community education, because if you're truly going to end and prevent the intergenerational cycle of family and domestic violence, you have got to get out and educate people. So an opportunity like this to talk to you all and all of the people you reach about who we are and what we do is critical to raising awareness and having people understand that there is no excuse for abuse, not ever, not once, not ever, and that we are here and we are available. We are free, we are confidential, and we are available 24/7. So there you go. That in a nutshell is Ederville House and our resources.
Thank you so much for that overview, Mary Jane. I'd like to kind of highlight one of the things that you said and maybe see if you can expand a little bit on this. So you mentioned the hotline. We have it up on the screen here. What happens when you dial this number and call the hotline? You want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure, that's a great question. And I'm really glad you asked it, because it wasn't until about a year or so ago I realized that people thought that the hotline was only for when you are in crisis. And in fact, a great use and the most common use of the hotline is for information. So our hotline, the hotlines across the state of Connecticut, are 24/7. As I said, they are free and confidential. We hold all information confidential, and we are legally protected to do so. So whatever you say on that hotline call stays with us, absolutely stays with us. And again, if you are in crisis, the first thing we do, no matter what, how or why you call, the very first thing we say is, are you safe? Is this a safe time for you to be speaking to us? How can we help you be safer? And do you need help with safety planning? Safety planning is a critical aspect of what we do. And it's something that we do over and over again, because staying safe for a victim of intimate partner abuse is dynamic. What works at 8 a.m. in the morning may not work that afternoon, or may not be working at night. So we are constantly working with those who call the safe house or the hotline, and those who are in the safe house or the courts to say, are you safe? How can we help you stay safer? So for instance, if someone calls and says they want to leave, we advise them on staying safe and what they should be planning to take with them. It's important when you leave, to take documentation, birth certificates, driver's license, passports, financial records, immunization records for your children, all of those things. So we provide all of that kind of information. We can also provide information for other resources in the community, whether that is housing alternatives or mental health referrals, any of those things, translation services. We can do all of that on that hotline. All of our advocates are highly trained and skilled and experienced. They had most of them had many years on the hotline, so they can respond to whatever that need is. And they do so efficiently, so that we are always mindful that a victim may not have all the time free and available to talk openly about circumstances. And so we move as efficiently and as effectively as we can through the call. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I really appreciate your emphasis on safety as a top priority during
Sure.
these calls from start to finish, because that's really the goal here, right?
Yes.
I'm wondering if you would like to talk a little bit more about the sorts of assistance you provide. So you mentioned you have language services. Is there any sort of like childcare or transportation services that you offer?
For the residents in our safe house, for instance, the children's program offers music and art therapy. When we can, we have a service dog visit on a weekly basis. So that in an effort to break that intergenerational cycle, study after study has shown that boys who experience family violence are 74% more likely to become abusive as adults. So we have to break that cycle. We have to reach the kids where they are and talk about good and healthy behaviors and relationships. And we do that one-on-one with our child advocate, but we also bring master level clinicians in to do art and music therapy with our children, and sometimes with the mothers and children together, so that they learn new skills and they think they're having fun, but they're really engaged in therapeutic work. And it's very helpful to the kids and to the mothers. Our adult advocate works with the mothers to help them figure out what their next steps should be. Remember the safe house, we never turn anyone away, and we never ask people to leave absent some sort of threatening or behavior that threatens the safety of our fellow residents. So, but the best thing in the world is for a victim to become a survivor and move to that next best place. So we work on a regular, at least weekly basis with our residents in the safe house to say, what is your next step? And that might be safe and affordable housing, which we all know in Connecticut is tough to find. We work, Interval House has staff that works very closely with the Coordinated Access Network so that we are right on top of available housing. When someone connects with housing, we have resources, we raise funds so that we have resources for that security deposit or maybe the first month rent. Or often, you can't sign a new lease unless you have paid utilities that might be in arrearage, and we have some funding for that. Or it might be that you return home and it's new locks or it's blinds. So we try to have those resources. We have partners with whom, as a for instance, Dress for Success, so that work clothing is available, so that life skill training, job resumes, how to move to the next step is available. Some of that we do internally, and some of that we do with partners, because I'm a big believer that we cannot do everything, and nor can anyone else. But together we can be so much more. So we have those particular resources. And then we have house meetings and support groups within the house so that victims, usually guided by a survivor, can talk about their experiences. And when we meet survivors a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 15 years out, they will invariably say the most rewarding piece, the piece of work that they have held onto most closely are the experiences in support groups. Because you arrive at the support group thinking you are all alone in the world. And you learn very quickly that not only are you not alone, but as I said earlier, there are common threads to this behavior and to circumstances and to outcomes. And so we work very hard to have support groups. In the court system, because our safe house is a confidential location, we work with our community clients in the courthouses, and we offer very much of the same kind of advocacy. We connect them to resources they might need, and that's always safe and affordable housing, almost always, and then the ability to connect with some kind of livelihood. As I said earlier, also, we are seeing more and more that financial control is a very big part of abusive relationships. You don't need to go to work. You don't need money. I can provide for you. You need to quit that. I need you here with me. And pretty soon, or a victim has been so terrified or abused, she can't go to work and loses her job. So finding a way to continue down a career path or to find a new job is also very, very important to our victims. Remember, somebody has to pay the bills, and you may have been paying your half of the bills or some of the bills or all of the bills, but it's a new world when you actually have to flee your home.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. We're coming up on our time, so I wanted to offer you, is there anything you'd like to say to those watching this video that you haven't had a chance to say so far?
I would, and it is the most important thing I will say today. People come to me all of the time and ask what they can do for us. And of course, I hope they'll write us a check so we can pay our light bill too, so that we can help and assist victims of domestic violence. But there is one cost-free thing that you can do, which is the most important thing you can do. Be aware of this issue. Do not be ashamed of this issue. If you know someone that you are concerned about, you do not have to be an advocate or an expert in domestic violence. All you have to do, and it's cost-free, is stay in touch. Hi, I'm thinking of you. How are you? Well, I'm here if you need anything. Call me anytime. Take good care. That's all you have to do. Victims are isolated. Isolation is the abuser's perfect construct. And we have just been through the probably most isolated period in our history. And so our numbers are up. The level of violence is up. Stay in touch. Reach out to your families. Reach out to your friends. reach out to your work colleagues. Victims need to know that there is someone who is there for them, who just is there for them, not judgmental. Don't ever ask somebody why they stayed, why they haven't left. Just be there. Have an open heart and an open ear and stay connected. That's what you can do.
Thank you. Anika, would you like to wrap us up here?
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. And thank you so much, Mary Jane. This was a lot, and it's so important to constantly talk about issues like these that are a lot more commonplace that people think. You might not know what situation you're in exactly, or what situation you're going to be in. And so it's so helpful to just constantly bring up awareness and, figure out how you can help yourself and how you can help others. So thank you a lot for being with us to have this conversation. Again, if you need to speak to Interval House, there's obviously the hotline, but there are also other ways to check them out, whether it's going to be online or social media. Please look into the programming services and resources and, be somebody who can help out, as we just talked about, in any way possible. If you're interested to learn more about the North Hartford Promise Zone, please contact us at northhartfordpz@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you want to learn more about how to help out the North Hartford Promise Zone or the Envision Center and the resources we provide to residents as well, please feel free to contact us at the Gmail or our social media, and we'll be in touch. So thank you so much again for joining us. And we're so happy to do this. And hopefully we can see more from Interval House with NHPZ in the future. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.